All right, well, Hunter, 7th-round draft pick of the Baltimore Orioles. Congratulations. Tell me a little bit about the emotions when you saw that you had been picked.
Yeah, man. I mean, everything leading up to draft day, is like all the, hard work, all the hours on the phone, all that stuff, sitting there, getting that call that I was going to go, to the Orioles and, 9th pick in the 7th round was, I can't even explain it. It was, I wish it was something everybody could experience. So.
Tell me a little bit about the process, because I don't think a lot of people know about that draft process. From the point when the season was over at the regional in Davenport to that day when you get drafted, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, like throughout the season, I had a lot of scouting, like coming to games and stuff like that, getting their reports in and everything like that. But like after the season, for me personally, like I went to individual workouts, to, focus on like teams that were most interested in me at the time. That was just something that like, my advisor for the draft, helped me out with, set up and stuff like that. But like, leading up to the draft, like there wasn't much else like performance wise that I could do. I think a lot of it was more like, hey, let's get to know him, like create that relationship, obviously. So like, for the Orioles, like that's a guy we want, not only is a good player on the field, but like that's a guy that we want in our organization for an extended period of time.
And then to know that you are the 3rd highest picked Eagle in the history of the Major League Baseball draft. There's been 9 of them. The 2 guys who were picked higher were in the 70s. So what does that mean when you think about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, especially like, in the new generation of baseball, obviously I could give the guys the credit in the 70s. Like, it's still awesome that they, ended up getting picked and stuff like that. But in like the new generation with like technology and stuff like that, like new advances, I think like it's really, really cool to get this opportunity, to get to play professional baseball. So.
And coming from a village up in northwestern Ohio, Woodville. So tell me a little bit about growing up there and then the process just playing baseball and moving along as you did as you were a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I tell everybody, like out of high school, I was not I was barely a college prospect. I played, Owens Community College gave me 2 years an opportunity to just extend my career, and then I had, 2 years of just great development there. And then, obviously hopped over to Ashland and they give them credit for giving me 2 years as well, to develop even more. So I think, like, in the overall scope of it, like, never give up, from an aspect of that. Like I was, out of high school, I wasn't even a prospect. So, now looking back, he's like, every step of the way was worth it. So.
And we do have a lot of community college, junior college players on the AU baseball team historically. And I don't think a lot of people really know about that level of play. Tell me a little bit about those 2 years at Owens Community College and the quality of play that there is there. Because guys do get drafted out of junior colleges.
No, absolutely. When I was at Owens, like I played on a really good team. D3 baseball isn't, high level, Power 5 baseball, but it was still good. I think like, when we're looking, at the exact stuff that goes on at like junior college, I think it's more of the opportunity stuff. Like I said, like I wasn't much of a prospect, not even, come out of high school, but junior college gave me an opportunity, but like, hey, like give this a shot, like extend your career and just have fun. I think like a lot of guys, overlook the junior college look, just because it's like, oh, it's only 2 years and then you have to redo everything again. But like for me, it was, an opportunity, and it was probably the most fun 2 years I ever had, playing as well. So.
And then after those 2 years, obviously guys look to move on to the NCBWA ranks. So for you, what was the process like going from Owens and then coming to Ashland?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like out of Owens, like I wasn't exactly like a high recruit. I know like I was on the map here at Ashland, and like I think that was why I ended up coming here, because they made me feel like it was at home for me, that I was, a really, high guy that they wanted to come here. But like even at that, redoing the process again, like just having 2 years, like, guys want you to come in and be a guy like immediately. So like that was something, that I really looked forward to, like coming out of a junior college. So.
And then your first year here, you pitched 20 innings, not a lot of work in your junior year. So what was the big difference for you from junior to senior year to get you to the point where it looked like you were going to be a draft prospect?
Yeah, absolutely. Like obviously, like you said, my junior season wasn't exactly what I was looking for. A lot of people probably after my junior season were like, all right, laughing if they were to see where I'm at right now, but like at the end of the season, sat down with Coach Shalley, talked to Coach Brady, and, we were just like, yeah, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I told Coach Shalley straight up, I was just like, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be your guy. Like I told him that, and everything in my life revolved around like that, those words right there, whether it was training, throwing, all that stuff, everything in my life was going towards that. Like I wasn't even focused on, professional baseball. I just wanted to be the best pitcher I could for Ashland this year. So.
And every year, John gives me a info sheet in about November or December to kind of get me ready for the season. It's got like starting lineups, projected rotation, and stuff like that. Yeah. And then there's a area on that sheet that says MLB draft prospect, and he put your name down there. And I'm thinking, all right, let's see how this turns out. And obviously, it turned out exactly the way he said it would.
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about his faith in you. Obviously, you work probably more with Brady being the pitching coach, but with John Shalley and being the all-time D2 wins leader and having that happen during your senior year, what is it like to play for somebody like that?
Yeah, man. I mean, he like overall, like you sit down and you watch him coach, and you're just like, yeah, like that's the guy. When it comes down to D2 baseball, when it came to me and Coach Shalley's relationship, it took us time, like for him to be able to trust me to put me out there in every meaningful game, like and stuff like that, but like obviously, like I said, like when we talked about like my junior season wasn't great, it was mutual, like I didn't give it the best out there, he didn't give me the best trust back, this is both ways, but like once I got out there this season, showed him that I was ready to go, like all it took was one inning. I think all it took was one inning, and that was the rest of the year. So,
and now you're following in the footsteps of a couple recent major league pitchers that have come from Ashland, Art Warren and Brandon Sittinger, and Art would come back every once in a while to campus and work out. Were you ever able to kind of pick his brain when he came back?
Absolutely. Art is my biggest mentor for the draft. I've talked to Art hundreds of times over the course of the season, through the goods and the bads, asking for advice all the time. I give him tons of credit, with decision making that I made, like with pretty much everything, and like I have an advisor for the draft, Ben Simon. He's great as well. Like both guys, giving me bits and pieces, going along the way was awesome. So.
Let's talk a little bit about Brady, because obviously he was your pitching coach and he just became the associate head coach. So how much did he help in your development here in the last couple of years?
Yeah, like I said, Ashland gave me an opportunity. I think, like throughout the season and stuff like that, Brady, finding the small things that we could work on. I think the bigger stuff, like throughout the, over summers and stuff like that, was more on my own. But like, making the small tinks, and using helping TrackMan and stuff like that was, he was really good at that. So.
Next steps, not signed yet. You're as of us doing this, you're a little more than 24 hours after being drafted. So obviously you sign, and then have you talked to Baltimore at all in the last 24 some hours? What were they kind of giving you?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a call from Trent yesterday. He think he's the area scout or the cross checker, one of the two. He called me, man. He was all fired up. He's like, "Are you ready to go, dude?" I was like, "Yeah." I mean, he's like, "We're all pumped up. Like we're glad we scored you." So I was really, it was really cool to get that phone call, and that they were excited to get me. So.
And that's got to be a big thing for you personally, because obviously being a Division II pitcher, they're not going to take you unless they're wanting you to be at the big league level. So have that right away to hear that had to be great for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was a big part, like going into the draft, like there's a little bit of unknown, when or where I was going to land, we had an idea, but like, I'm more than ecstatic, where I ended up, overall. So.
And finally, again, Hunter, thank you for taking the time to do this. It's obviously a whirlwind for you here the last day or so, but what's your preference, starting or relieving as a professional?
Oh, I want to be a starter, man. You going back to when I was a little 12, 13-year-old kid, man. I told my dad I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Looking at it now, I want to go. I want to go and be a professional starter. I want to be a guy that's running out every weekend. So